Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Attract and Stand Out podcast. I am so excited to have Megan Barnhard today. She is a writing coach for bold thinkers who want to use their authentic voice to build their passion-fueled business or to share their true story of transformation. With over 13 years experience as a writing coach and business owner, Megan knows the power of authentic storytelling and marketing, and also how challenging it can be to write your own story. Megan helps people find their flow and write from the heart, whether they're creating or crafting their website content, blog posts, or books, so they can share their story, inspire others, and attract more of the clients they feel called to serve. In addition to coaching, Megan has authored 3 books all about the writing process and blogged about writing for over 7 years and written copy for online marketing experts and a New York Times bestselling author. Welcome to the podcast, Megan. I am so excited that you are here.
Thank you so much for having me, Darlene, and thank you for your kind words about my gift. Yeah, I super appreciate that.
Yeah, you are a talented, giving person, which I love so much about you. And I love that we have so much in common when it comes to helping our audience and our people to share their story and to show up in such a big, authentic way. We do the same thing, but in like a different format of it, which I love. Like, I love helping people be visible and share their story to connect with their ideal clients. And you do that exact same thing when it comes to sharing their story, whether but just in written form, right? Like with helping people craft their books and create amazing content for their audience to pull them in and to attract the people they want to work with.
Yeah. And we need that, right? Like as business owners, we need those different options. Like, do you want to write it long form? Do you want to do more video? We need the thing that really vibes with us, and to have that option to, like, you can tell your story in this way if that's what lights you up, or you can tell it in this way if that's what lights you up. I feel like there's so much magic there.
Yeah. There's so many different ways that you can do it and show up, which is super unique because each of us are so different. Like, some of us are amazing writers. Some of us do better showing up on video or connecting live and in person. So there's so many ways that you can share your story. And I love that you help so many people do that. But take us back as we kind of dive into this conversation today. I would love to learn a little bit kind of about you and where you live and your family, and then how you came on this journey to start your own business.
Sure. Yeah. So currently I live on the central coast of California with my hubby and our kitty, who kind of rules the house. He's actually sitting on my lap right now because he's the boss. And our move to the Central Coast actually played a really big role in my story as a business owner. So I'll take you back and then I'll catch you up to speed.
Yeah.
I, right out of college, knew I wanted to teach. And I had started learning some about teaching reading and writing remediation. I'd done these courses while I was still in school. And I was like, this is fascinating. I love learning how people's brains work. I love that there are all these different ways that we learn. I want to pursue this. And I started as a classroom assistant in a special education school. And it was so intense. And I am one of those people who just like absorbs the emotions that are all around me. I was like, I'm not cut out for this, because there is just so much going on for these kids. You know, imagine being only 8 years old and already your life is full of meetings and paperwork and individual education plans and seeing all these specialists. And they were just so like really upset. And I loved the work of being able to, as an assistant, I had this great advantage where I could work one-on-one with kids. And I started doing that just on my own as well. I got these referrals and was working with kids one-on-one to help them find their writing process. And in this time, I learned that without a doubt, there is a writing process for everyone. Like, there is a way to make writing work no matter who you are, no matter how your brain is wired. And that sticks with me to this day. And that's something like I really passionately believe, that writing is everybody's right, and there's a way for everybody to do it. But the way for me to be helpful was not being in that classroom setting, because I was like too sensitive to just absorb all the stuff that was going on. So I transitioned and I started working in a private school for students who were really high achieving. And I was like, you know, this is not what I'm cut out for either. Because in that classroom setting, you have to help everybody kind of move along through the curriculum. And I would see kids who were really getting it and they were ready for more of a challenge. And then I would see kids who really needed more help. And there wasn't time to do what either of them needed, right? It's like, just keep everybody going and you have to get through all of the curriculum
Yeah.
and you have to fill out all the paperwork. And that didn't work for me either. So it was the end of the year. I'd been teaching fourth grade, and one of the parents of one of my students said, my daughter has never done more writing or enjoyed writing more than she did in your class this year. What are you doing over the summer? So, I never set out to go, I'm going to be a writing coach. I'm going to start this business. I knew I loved writing. I knew I loved teaching writing. I knew I loved helping people find their process, but it was just this kind of serendipitous invitation. I went, okay, let's do it. And from there, I started, building up this practice and working with students. Now, this was all in the Bay Area in San Jose, which was such a perfect spot for me to be, because there's a lot of competition around education, and a lot of really, really smart people. You have engineers moving there to be in Silicon Valley, and they're like, okay, my kid is definitely going to Stanford. And so there was all this like, what are the extras we could get? A writing coach. Okay, yeah, can you teach my student how to write better essays and college applications and all that kind of thing? So it was great in the sense that my business was thriving. I didn't have to advertise at all. After a couple of years, I matched the salary I'd been making as a teacher, and I had all this business from referrals. But what started to happen was, instead of staying really focused on, I'm a writing coach, I would go, well, of course I can help prepare your student for that test. Oh, of course we can work on a little bit of, math or science or other subjects. And I started it was my business, but I started feeling like I wasn't in control because I wanted to help. And so I kept saying, yes, well, yes, we'll do that. Yes, we'll do that. And the writing coaching started to get pushed down a little bit. So in 2012, after 6 years of running this business, my husband had an opportunity to move for work. And it was to move to the Central Coast, which is a place that I loved. I grew up in LA, and we would come camping here. And I was like, let's do this. This sounds amazing. And I thought, well, I'll just move my business online, right? It'll be easy.
Yeah, super easy.
And of course, it wasn't super easy. As you know, there's a lot that goes into building a business online. But what ended up happening was that was a perfect opportunity for me to kind of restart and reassess. And I did have some of the families I worked with follow me and start working with me online, and I still got some referrals. But it was also this chance for me to really go, okay, what's the next chapter? It was a natural break. And so that's really what led me into, it was a couple of years after the move that I thought, okay, who else, what else am I being called to do? And because I was trying to move things online, I signed up for this course in 2015 that was called Make It Work Online. And it was all about how to build a thriving business online, not just deliver online, but to actually get your clients online. And that was a huge landmark moment for me, because I was meeting all of these entrepreneurs who were building businesses online, who needed to do writing for their businesses, and who were struggling. They would try to write their about page and go, I don't know, do I have a story? What's interesting about me? What could I tell people? And I would be listening and in my brain going like, oh my gosh, she should talk about that because she mentioned that on the coaching call, and that would be such a great story to tell. And that's what eventually led me to now be coaching business owners and thought leaders and people who are working on books, was really seeing that being inside a group like that business coaching program and getting to see, oh, these are people who not only need to do writing and tell their story, but when these people tell their stories, when these business owners tell their stories, they are making a huge impact on the world. This is not like, hey, I wrote an essay on To Kill a Mockingbird. Like, well, that's great for the student, like that teaches them the skills they need to know. But when these people were doing writing, it was having this ripple effect outward, where they were getting to show up and do work that is changing the world in a really dramatic way. So, and that's, I still love working with people who run passion-fueled businesses, people whose businesses are their gifts and whose businesses are also changing the world in amazing, awesome ways, like the coaches and the healers and the people who are like helping us all be better humans, really.
Yeah. No, I love that you do that, because, and it was interesting to hear like you share your story and like how you transition from working with students and how you had like these aha moments and like kind of like light bulb moments, right, for yourself. And you were able to follow those breadcrumbs and figure out what it is that you wanted to do and have those moments through that journey. One of the things that you talked about was how you took on different work with clients and you kind of lost yourself during that process. And that hit home for me, and I can only imagine that it's hitting home with other people. There's so many clients that I talk to, and even myself, we get so lost in the journey sometimes of figuring out who we want to help, and we want to help everybody, right? Because most of us have like this big, huge heart, and I attract a lot of like what I call heart-centered entrepreneurs. They're like their hearts are huge. If they could save the whole entire world right now, they would do it because that's their gift and what they want to do. But we can lose ourselves so much during that process. What do you think was like the big moments for yourself that took you, like that gave you those light bulb moments where you're like, okay, I'm not doing work that I love doing anymore. Like, yeah, I'm paying the bills and I'm, bringing some income in, but this work is not where I should be and not what I want to do. How did you catch yourself in that process?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. So a lot of it was in the contrast because, we can get used to anything. If it's what you're doing on a daily basis, you get used to it.
Yeah.
So on a daily basis, I was helping kids, like prepare for the SAT and teaching them the grammar they needed to know for that. And I was like, okay, this is fine. And then I would have a student who was just such an amazing, brilliant, bright spot that it would create this contrast. And I would go, oh, this is the kind of work I feel called to do. And it was still within the context of helping them achieve academically. A lot of it came up when I started helping high school students think about their story so they could write college application essays, which is, there's such a huge stress there for students and there's such a huge stress there for parents. So it would be still under that umbrella of, Megan, she helps with writing and, helps with the SATs and college application essays and all of that. But we would get into their story and I would basically use the same process that I use now to help business owners write their about page or people who are working on their books. I'd interview them and I'd really push them in this loving way, like, yeah, but what's your special sauce? But what about, or pause them, they would go, oh, it was nothing. I just volunteered this summer. And I'd be like, wait, tell me more about that. And this story would come out and I would go, oh, here's this bright, shining human being. And like, really, the best way I can help this person is to fill in the bubbles on the SAT, right? Like that can't be what my calling is. So a lot of the aha moments were just serving really amazingly, incredibly bright young people and seeing their passion and going, I want to model for them that the world is their oyster. And, I'm not the parent in that situation. It's the parent, who is having that conversation with the student about like, what are your college plans and like what, all of that important stuff. But I wanted to be somebody who could show them that learning their story and being able to write and being able to express their passion is equally important to ticking all the right boxes and going on that official path. So that was, probably where most of my ahas came from, but also, going through that business coaching program that I mentioned, Make It Work Online, I was totally new to the world of online business and business general. I didn't have any business training. Both my parents ran their businesses when I was growing up. So I just thought, sure, it's normal. You start a business, but I didn't have any background in how to do that. So seeing that having help with writing was a need totally blew my mind. And I had been in this context of, well, the only way to, who wants writing help? Nobody wants to write. It's just students who have to write. Okay, I'll help students. Obviously I told you how I came to do that and it wasn't through that thought process.
Yeah.
But once I was working with students, I had that thought process. Like, well, nobody who's a grown-up would ever want to write because they don't have to. So there's no market. I had this story that there was no market for writing coaching for anybody besides students. And I had a huge aha once I was with other business owners and seeing the writing they needed to get done. And I'm so grateful for that experience where I went, oh, you guys need writing help? I would love to give you writing help. Like, this is my fantasy. It was like having the blue fairy from Pinocchio come down and go, your wish is granted.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it was a story that you tell yourself. And
Yeah.
that's something that so many of us struggle with. We tell ourselves these stories and like they play on repeat in our head. And it causes us to procrastinate or to not move forward or to stay stuck and spin out versus moving forward. And I think when we accept that it's just a story and that we get to change the ending to that story, like we get to choose the steps we take and the action that we're going to take and what that looks like, it's such like an aha moment for us. Like, wow, like I don't have to stay stuck. I don't have to keep staying exactly where I'm at. I'm able to move forward and make changes.
Yeah. And I bet you see this with your clients, Darlene, but when you help somebody tell their story, it changes them because it's exactly that same thing, right? So if somebody is coming in with let's say their story of their business journey, right? And the story is, oh, well, I'm just not very good at anything. And so I did this one thing I was good at. And if you help them rewrite the story where they get to be the hero and they get to go like, oh, I, have all these skills and here's how I use them to help people. Telling a different story changes how you show up. Do you see that with the people you work with?
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of times they're stuck on what even is a story to share, right? Because so many people don't look at their past accomplishments from their career or their childhood or the different things that they've experienced in school. Like we forget when we start a business all of a sudden that like those things still count. Like we can still share those stories. They're still a part of us and that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us stand out, is all those little pieces. But a lot of people I talk to, they struggle or they're like, well, I started this business and like, I don't know what story to share about my business. Like I've had my business for a couple of years. And like when we do the research and we dig into it, like there's stories from their childhood, there's stories from experiences in college or whatever they are. And they're like, oh, I can share those stories. And it's like, yeah, like that's you. Like like those are all the stories that made you who you are today. And that's why you're able to show up and serve the way that you do. And I love seeing like that aha moment where they're like, I didn't even think about sharing those stories from my corporate days when I was leading, huge teams or whatever it was that they've done. And they're like, it's like that, like it's a sigh of relief almost. They're like, oh, I can still share those pieces. Like I don't have to act like they didn't exist and that they weren't there for a reason.
And that's so much of what we do when we write stories and we tell stories, right? Is we're integrating different parts of ourselves and we're drawing similarities and we're finding commonalities, right? Like, oh, this is a theme, all through my life, I have been a helper, or all through my life, I have been a writer or a connector, whatever it is. And what I think is really powerful for people to see is when they can see a strength in one part of their life and apply it to what they're trying to do right now that's challenging. And this comes up a lot for me with my writing clients, where they'll get stuck somewhere in writing and I'll ask, okay, what you're really doing here is, for example, planning. So tell me about another time in your life when you successfully planned something. And they'll go, oh, well, I planned this event. Or I had a book writing client one time, a book coaching client one time, who got stuck on outlining. And she's like, I cannot find an outlining process that I like. It all just seems really boring and terrible. And I asked her that question, when was the time you successfully planned? And she said, well, I used to be an interior designer. And when I would plan, I would create this mandala for all of the rooms. She ended up making a mandala book outline that blew my mind. And it totally worked for her. She was excited about it. And it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. I could never have said to her, why don't you try a mandala outline for your book? Because I didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
But she used, like, by looking at her whole experience instead of just, well, now I'm an author and before I was an interior designer, she was able to go, oh, that's what worked for me before. Let me try it now. And I'm like, that's the magic of getting that bigger picture view.
Yeah. And it's so fun to have like a writing coach in your corner to help you find those ahas, because so often we forget about them or we don't trust ourselves that those past experiences are things that we can share or that we could work with. And I love that, like, by you asking a simple question to her, like it hit that spot for her where she's like, oh, well, I've done this before and this was always super successful and nobody else has done what she's done, right? Or at least like to the degree, like it was her journey, her way of transforming it and creating her outline for herself. in a completely unique way that works for her.
I feel like all of the clients I work with say or kind of show through their behavior that they think they're using a writing process that is not the right one. And I think maybe this comes from the fact that for so many of us in school, writing is miserable. And so, they teach us that writing process, like you're supposed to brainstorm and outline and draft and revise and edit and publish. But that doesn't tell you how to do any of those things. Like I remember from my days as a teacher, I had that poster on the wall that I'd gotten from the teacher supply store that had those 6 steps, but it doesn't tell you how to do any of them. And if you were lucky enough to get a teacher who kind of walked you through, or if you enjoyed writing, then maybe you kind of figured out a little bit of that. But I think we arrive as adults knowing what finished writing looks like and making the mistake of thinking that it starts that way. And so then we're like, well, oh no, my first draft was really horrible. And it didn't look anything like a published blog post that I would read. So I must be doing something wrong. And it is my greatest joy to be able to say, there is no such thing as a right writing process. There is only what works for you. And people go like, oh, okay. And like, then you get to try things, then you get to get curious, and obviously they're not in a vacuum, right? I'm like, you might try this. Like, I think you're this type of thinker. This might really work for you. And I would say I'm probably right about 90% of the time. Sometimes I'm off. But they get to try it. And if it doesn't work, then I go, awesome. Tell me what about it you didn't like, because now that's going to lead us to what does work for you. But there's a lot of baggage and a lot of judgment of ourselves that we bring to writing and telling our story, where we go, oh, I'm probably not doing it right. And there's no right way to do it. There's just what works for you.
Yeah. And that's so true, because in so many areas of our lives, like we see other people doing things in one way. And so we think, oh, I have to show up and market the same way as this person because they look super successful. They have like 5 million Facebook likes, or they have 1 million comments. And then when we show up to try to emulate what they're doing, it doesn't work for us. And that's because it's not authentic to us. Like, we can't always do things exactly the same way as other people. If it doesn't light us up, if it doesn't feel exciting to us, like, we're not going to show up in that same energy that somebody else might in that same situation.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a perfect segue into, now I'll tell you the ending of my story. I mean, not the ending, but like the rest of it. Yeah. Because after I had that huge epiphany, like, oh, business owners and entrepreneurs need writing help, I spent a couple of years still really out of alignment and not doing what was lighting me up and not sharing my gifts. Because even though I'd overcome that one story about like, there's no market for writing coaching for adults, which now cracks me up, because like I follow the hashtag writing coach on Instagram, and there's 1 million people who are doing writing coaching in all different kinds of awesome ways. And I was like, I can't believe I thought this wasn't a thing. But the next story I started telling myself was, okay, well, the only market for writing coaching is if I become a master of writing copy, or helping people, I don't know, do the big fancy parts of writing for their business. And the story was, nobody is interested in writing coaching that's about helping them find their process or making it easier for them to write. I was like, I have to promise something really big. It has to be, your copy is going to convert 100%, or, your blog post will be the best on the block. And I tried really hard to learn all these new skills to, I have no formal training in copywriting. I have my experience, and I have like my X-ray vision when it comes to writing. I follow a lot of really amazing copywriters, and I look at what they're doing, and I'm able to go, oh, okay, here's the writing recipe she's using. She's starting with this, and then she's doing, I'm like, I could do that. So I definitely have copywriting chops, but I'm by no means the world's best copywriter. And I was trying to push myself to be something I wasn't, when really deep down, I still wanted to do what I had been doing from day one, which was helping people find their process and watch the moment when their eyes light up and they get it. They're like, oh, wait, I can outline like that. Oh, yes, that feels so easy. That feels in flow. So, I spent a couple more years still fighting what was really in my heart. And, needless to say, it was a challenge. It was a slog. I had to really push myself to um, show up, and I felt kind of just out of alignment. And it was really only within the last, um, you know, 18 months or so, I would say, that through a combination of a lot of things, like just certain clients that you get who really need what you have, and you're able to, like, even though I was putting my shingle out for one thing, like, I'm going to help you write this copy and this messaging, we're going to get it dialed in. I would get these clients who really were getting the process part. And so it was a combination of that, working with some coaches, being like just more honest with myself about what I really want. And now I'm in a place where I'm helping people tell their stories, write for their businesses, write their books, but it's all really about finding the process that works for them. And I call it writing in flow, when you just write and you go, I could spend, like, I lose track of time because it's just coming from my heart and it's so enjoyable. So yeah, it's really coming back to what you were just saying about, if we're trying to do it the way somebody else does it, or if we're trying to offer services that we think are the right ones, or if we're going, well, there's no market for the thing that I'm really passionate about, there's a market for everything. Yeah. So I'm glad to be where I am now, but it was a challenge while I was not operating from my heart, and I was operating from should.
Yeah, I love that. So it makes me wonder, a lot of us do compare ourselves to other people that do what we do. Like you said, there's a million people that do writing coaching at this point. What do you think is some of the specific things about you and your style that make you stand out above everybody else?
Yeah. So I told you that when I first started working in a school, one of the challenges was that I was super sensitive and I was picking up on everything that was going around. Well, I realize now that's actually my superpower. So when I teach people how to write copy and content for their business, what I'm teaching them to do is listen really, really um, intently to their audience. And you could almost think of it as like listening between the lines. You're listening to what people aren't saying, but they mean. And so I have that superpower, and it allows me to write copy that connects with my audience, because I'm really, really listening to them, and I'm reflecting back what they're feeling. Like, my favorite thing is when people respond to my emails and say, oh my gosh, Megan, it's like you read my mind. And I'm like, yes, that's my intention, is I want you to feel like I really see you and I really hear you. But I teach my clients who are writing for their businesses how to do that as well. And I break it down into some practical steps. So, and I think that's one of my other superpowers, is I have a very associative way of thinking. And so I'm able to, like, see where somebody is right now, and kind of like I was sharing with, well, what's a way you've planned before that's worked, but I'm able to get inside their heads a little bit. So when I coach them and they'll say, well, I'm stuck here. And I say, yeah, but you told me that story about this. And so what you need to do for this blog post is kind of similar to what you did over there. Or if you would just tell that story. I'm always making connections. So that helps me direct my clients as far as what they could try that would work for them. And also it helps me connect the dots in their story. They go, I don't have this story. It's just like this and that, and it's also random. And I'm like, no, you see, because this connects with this for this reason, which brought you here. And then now you're at this other place. And they're like, oh, that does make sense. And I love writing content that connects. I love helping other people write content that connects. So I think that, like, in this beautiful full circle way, what started out feeling like a huge liability, even when I moved into mainstream classroom teaching, because I felt it as such a heavy weight, like, oh, this student is not getting it, and I have to like make sure he gets his spelling and he understands. What seemed like a liability is now my biggest asset, where I have like a sixth sense of what is the right language and what are the right words that somebody can use to reach their audience.
Yeah, it's so cool to see like how that connects back from like how you used to think it was, like you said, like a liability and like it was a bad thing, and now how that's your superpower, and that's how you're able to show up so well to connect with your clients and to help them connect those dots as well. It's
Yeah.
it's fascinating when you like look back at your life and you're like,
It
oh, I
feels
used
good.
to think this was like such a bad thing, and like now I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is my favorite thing about me, and I'm
Yeah.
so glad that I finally picked up on it and I'm able to have that, super spidey sense to
Yeah.
people.
And here's something else when it comes to, so we've kind of had a theme of like the stories we tell ourselves and owning your story. So here's something else that is part of my superpower that I used to reject. I used to kind of feel I wasn't, I don't know, something about my business wasn't as good as other people's because I work with kids. And that wasn't from my opinion about kids. Kids are my favorite people. I love them. But I would felt like other people might have that. Oh, Megan is just, and I got called a tutor all the time, which would bug the life out of me. I'm like, I am a writing coach. I am teaching these kids the writing process. So I would like shy away a little bit from talking about working with students, but now I embrace that because the other thing I bring to my writing coaching with my clients now is the same fun and like silliness that I use with students, as well as that same awareness of the fact that they may have had some drama or trauma around writing. Like I I see in my grown-up clients who own businesses and are, very accomplished people, I can kind of see in them the 8-year-old who got, scolded for having bad penmanship, or the high school student who was told that, like, oh, your essays don't make sense, and, you don't think about being a writer in your career because it's not going to happen. Like, I'm aware of that inner kid who probably has like some bad memories of writing, just
Yeah.
because most of us do. And also I'm bringing the fun and I'm bringing the joy. And that we know we need to do that when we are with kids in whatever capacity, but we forget that for adults. And I think writing can absolutely be fun and can absolutely be joyful. I know it's not everybody's favorite thing to do, and that's totally cool. I'm not out to make people fall in love with it, but I think everybody can enjoy writing more and find the fun and find the flow in it. And that definitely carries over from the work that I did with students.
Yeah. And it's so true, because you want to be able to have fun in your business, right? Like as an entrepreneur, like we don't want to be like super serious and stuffy and like all grown up all the time. Like it's okay to be relaxed and to be free spirited and to like let like that inner child come out
Yeah.
and play sometimes and show up in how you run your business and how you write for your business and how you talk to clients. Like it doesn't have to be stuffy. It can
Yeah.
be fun and exciting and playful.
Well, my experience is it's just way more productive. Like, I actually think finding the joy in writing is super practical, because so much of what happens that stops people from writing, and I hear this from people who are either getting the writing done, but it's miserable, or they're not writing, like they had a blog and they gave up on it, or they're really just, only posting here and there on social media when they really do have a lot more to say, is the perfectionism is kicking in so strong. So, and if you can make writing lighter and more joyful, it's not just because you need to, I don't know, it's not because all of business necessarily is going to be fun, but you'll get it done. If you find, we put off the tasks that are really miserable. We all have that task in our business, right? Whether it's doing your books at the end of the month, or I don't know, like sending emails. We all have that part of our business where we're like, oh, I dread this, and I'll put it off and put it off. And so my goal is to make writing fun enough and light enough that people don't put it off. And it doesn't mean you're not getting across serious ideas. It just means that your approach to it is so much less, you don't dread it, right? You're not bogged down in that feeling of it's got to be perfect.
Yeah. What is one thing that you wish you would have known when you started your business? Yeah, like if you could have told your past self, like when you started your business, what would be that one thing that you would tell yourself?
It would absolutely be that you need to give things more time to see if they work. So I have like, I'm a very creative person. I'm always having ideas. I'm always having the next big idea for my business. And I have had this habit of trying this and doing it for, a week and nothing happens. Okay, so now I'll try this. And of course, it takes longer than that to get traction. So what I wish I had known is, or had, is a more realistic sense of how long you really need to commit to something and run it as a good experiment before leaving it behind. And I am positive that I would be so much further ahead in my business if I would have stuck with, like, committed to one course of action longer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because so many people I talk to have trouble with that, like, consistency. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I tried marketing this way, or I tried doing this. And I'm like, well, how many times did you try doing it? And they're like, well, once or twice.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
we give up on ourselves too quickly before we can really look at it and see if it was going to work or if it wasn't going to work. Like, maybe it wouldn't work. Like, you could be on to it, but at the same time, if you only do it one or two times, there's not enough data to really show like that this did not work or that this was going to work. So yeah, I always tell my clients, like, you have to be consistent. You have to continue to show up. Like, if you're going to do something new, like, commit to doing it for, 90 days or 6 months and be
Yeah.
consistent and see what happens. And if in 6 months it's still not working, then maybe you like reassess and look at things differently. But don't give up on yourself on the second time. It's like, oh, well, I tried this new format and nobody um, acknowledged it or commented or took me off on this new offer. And it might just be you have to put it out there a few more times. You have to share it in a new way, show up differently. You don't have to change your
Yeah.
whole entire scheme.
Yeah. And you bring up such a good point too, is like, first give it time, but then also, what are the ways you can make small tweaks and adjustments instead of just tossing the whole thing and
Yeah.
going, oh, well, clearly doing X doesn't work. You're like, wait, what if you did X and you changed your copy for it a little bit, or you changed the graphic, or, something small like that. So I've definitely had that issue too, of not taking the time to really be scientific about it and go, well, if I gave it enough time to work and it's not working, what part of it is not working and what can I change?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the whole entire thing. Like we said, it could be as simple as like changing the title or changing the graphic that you use or switching some wording up. It doesn't have to be like, oh, well, it didn't work. Let's throw the whole entire thing out the window and let's start something all from scratch again. That like,
Yeah.
and it pushes you back and it gives you that, like, your confidence is low because you're like, oh, woe is me. This didn't work. Like, I put my heart and soul into this and I didn't give it, it didn't work. So I have to like restart from the bottom again. And in all reality, it could have been like a slight tweak or a small change. So yeah.
Yeah. Which is probably one of the things that draws me to writing coaching too, because you get to do that. Like, you get to show people and model for them. Like, you don't throw out the whole first draft when you see something in the third paragraph that you're like, oh, I don't like that. You make a plan and you go, okay, why don't you like that? What's wrong? Oh, well, it feels really stiff and formal. How do you want it to be? Oh, I want it to be more conversational. Okay, great. Here are some strategies for making it more conversational. Go execute, do it. Is it better now? Yes. So, as with so many coaches, I'm helping people to like do the things for themselves that I have struggled with, which is, how we show up and serve, right?
Yeah. And that happens so often. Like, we are learning lessons for ourselves and then we're able to teach what we've learned to other people. But it's always nice to have experienced it a little bit or to, have that place of understanding.
Yeah, I definitely am the kind of leader where I'm like, hey guys, let me help you around the mud puddle. I know it's there because I just stepped in it.
Yep. Let me throw my jacket down on top of it for you so that you
Like,
don't get wet
yeah,
and fall in.
let's look for a path. Yes, I'm covered in mud. It's all good.
But that's like the I think one of the brilliant ways that we can show up for our clients is we've experienced these situations and we've gone through it before them. So it's not like we're like, oh, this is how you do it and this is how it's done perfectly. It's like, yeah, I got messy and I got muddy and like it hurt and I scraped my knee and like I bumped my head, but
Yeah.
I came through it. And now because I was able to go through that experience, I can show up in such an authentic way for you to help you get through this journey in
Yeah.
an easier format without having to necessarily bump your knee and hit your head and like be completely muddy. Like you might just get your shoe wet or muddy. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the whole you.
Yeah. And one of the things I do is I create resources for people to overcome writing resistance and procrastination and what I call the writing gremlins, which are those voices in our heads that say, it's not perfect, erase it. Who wants to read this? Everything's been said before. You know, those little nasty voices that we all get in our businesses generally and in writing in particular. And sometimes when I'll share a resource, a client will say, oh, this is so exactly what I'm going through. And I'm really honest with them. And I say, I've been there too. I created this based on my own experience. I'm not doing this from on high, like, oh, you mortals might have some writing resistance. I'm like, this is 100% what I came to after like examining what wasn't working for me. And that gives them, you know, they get the relief of having the practical tool to get over the obstacle, but it's also really wonderfully encouraging when you are stuck and struggling and then you learn you're not alone. Like this is a struggle people go through. That's one of the biggest relief I see on my clients' faces when I say, this is the part of writing the book where everybody gets stuck. Like, oh, thank God. I'm not the only one. There's not something wrong with me. Yeah. You're like, oh, okay, yeah. This is why they call it the muddle in the middle.
Yeah. And it's so important to know that we're not alone when it comes to business and that other people have gone on this journey. Like every single thing I think I teach has been because I needed to hear it and I needed to go through it or experience it first.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to come out the other side and I'm like, okay, now I know how to do this. Like, it's not like you said, like we don't come to this with like this almighty. It's like, it's because we've stumbled and fallen and like we didn't get stuff done the first time. And we learned from that. And like, we're sharing our takeaways and what we learned through that experience. And it's able to help make it easier for other people going forward. So they don't have to go through all of that.
And that's why it's so important. That's why you and I are so passionate about people telling their stories, right? Because then when our clients are telling their stories, somebody else who's reading that story is going, oh, I thought I was the only one. Right. And it's where when we share our stories and when we share with vulnerability and like openness, that other people are really, really served and really, really helped, even before they're your clients, right? If somebody's just reading that story that you posted on Instagram or Facebook or on your blog and gets a chance to go, oh, I thought I was the only one, but no, it turns out somebody else has gone through a similar experience or a similar setback or whatever it is, or had that same doubt. You know, it might not be an exact parallel journey, but you're like, oh my gosh, if she felt that doubt and she's able to be a leader, I can do it too.
Yes, yes. I so love that because there's so many times that people read other people's stories and they're like, it's like that mirror reflection. Like you see yourself and what they're sharing, and maybe the journey is completely different, but you can still see yourself in their shoes or in that on the walk that they've gone through. And it's so powerful to connect and to just be able to connect in that way where you do feel alone. Like especially as entrepreneurs, so many people that we talk to they're alone and they're a solopreneur and they're running this business with either just themselves or maybe they have a small virtual team that they bring in for consults or for small contract jobs. But for the most part, like we don't need to feel alone because there's such a big community of people that are out there doing the same thing we're doing. It's about tapping into those people and connecting and knowing that if you are struggling with writing, that you call Megan and you get help through that process. Like finding the people though that can support you and give you what you need to balance you out and to make you feel whole and not to feel alone. It's just a beautiful, powerful thing.
Yeah. It's so funny to me that I'm technically like in marketing now, because I don't have any marketing background, but the reason I'm here and the reason I think it's really important and I'm passionate about the work I do is because connection is the new marketing. And that means that like I get to help people who have a gift to share it with more people and show up and say, hey, I have something that can help you. Via their story, via the content they're writing, via their blog posts. And you call them heart-centered entrepreneurs, which I totally love. And I use the term passion-fueled business owners. But these are people who are really making the world a better place, in my opinion. Yeah. The work they're doing, the way they're showing up, the way they're making money and contributing to the economy is also healing, helping, reaching out to people who need it, helping transform lives, like whether you're a health coach or you're a storytelling coach or a branding coach or a life coach or a healer, like all of those people whom I love serving, and I know you serve a lot as well.
Yeah.
They're making the world a freaking better place.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I get to help you get more clients coming in for that and do it by creating connection. And connection really comes down to storytelling. So I feel so honored to be able to help people do work that builds their businesses. And then for me, it feels so much more in alignment than helping kids pass the SAT.
Yes. Yeah. It's so rewarding. Like you said, like you're helping other people make an impact in sort of the world in a greater way. So it's like you get to experience it with like all these different layers attached to it as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as we start to wrap things up, I always love to ask a couple of rapid fire questions at the end of these interviews, just to kind of get to know who you are a little bit better. So
Sure.
I have just a couple for you. Do you have a morning routine?
Does it count if I don't always do it?
Yes.
Yeah. Drinking lemon water is like I always do it no matter what, like hot lemon water. I don't know why I started doing that. I heard somewhere lemon water is good for you. And if it's not raining out, I walk in the morning, and this is a time to just let my brain wander. And that's when I'll often have my best ideas. And if I'm really on it, I'll also do some yoga with Adriene on YouTube.
Awesome. Yeah. And it's funny because you're right. Like sometimes the routines get a little bit off track, but it's nice to know that like you can go back to it when it's the right time for you. Who has made the biggest impact on your life? Do you have like a big influencer that's been that person, or somebody in your life that's just like mentored you in a big way?
Okay, super cheesy sounding, but I really am so grateful to both my parents, who are both entrepreneurs. They're retired now, but that modeling that you can run a business and you can be successful and you can do what you love, amazing to see. My business space mentors, definitely Jenny Shee, who runs the Make It Work Online program that I mentioned at the beginning. Denise Duffield Thomas, the money mindset mentor. Elizabeth Gilbert is probably my favorite thinker out there. I just think she's so brave and courageous in terms of the ideas that she shares. And I feel like every day I'm finding new amazing thought leaders, business owners to follow and going, oh my gosh, this person is just so bold and brave and is showing up exactly as they are right now. And that inspires the pants off me.
Yeah, I love that. So what is your favorite way to recharge? Do you have like a happy place or something that you like to do, like when you're feeling like low energy or that you just need to reset?
Yeah, I have a favorite coffee shop that I haven't been able to go to in a little while, but it is all done up in turquoise in my favorite colors. And I sit there, I bring my laptop and I write and I work on whatever I feel inspired to. Sometimes it's like a book that I'm working on. Sometimes it's, an email sequence or something I need to get done for business, but it becomes, I get to write instead of I need to write. And I drink my tea out of a turquoise mug and just bask in, oh my gosh, this is what I get to do as my job. I'm the luckiest person on the planet.
Yes, you are. And the last question I have, it's a little bit different right now because I know there's some travel bans going on in the world. But if you could travel anywhere, where would you go?
I would go to Ireland and stay in like an old, castle or manor house for a writing retreat. That is totally my fantasy. And just like watch the rain and the mist and drink strong tea and write all day.
That sounds amazing. Yeah. I'll go with you.
Okay.
I'll do some writing, but I definitely want to go there as well, just to see all the greenery and to travel around and experience Ireland for all of its beautiful glory.
I mean, and obviously we'll head down to the pub once we're done writing for the day.
That's what they're most known for, right?
Tea during the day, Guinness during the night. It's all good.
Sounds perfect. Megan, it's been so great having you on today. How can people connect with you? What's the best place to hang out with you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram a lot. I'm Write with Megan on Instagram. And I also would love to offer folks the opportunity to get some writing flow themselves. I have a free 5-day mini course called Content That Connects, and people can find it at meganbarnhard.com www.meganbarnhard.com/connect, CONNECT. And then I also have a free Facebook group called Write in Flow, and we have writing prompts and some writing games, and just a place where people can come get the writing done, talk about their goals, and get some support and coaching from me.
Awesome. And I will make sure all those links are below on YouTube and on the podcast so that everybody can grab those links and go say hi and connect with you. So thank you so much, Megan, for being on. It's been so fun talking to you.
Thank you for having me. This was an absolute joy, Darlene.